Hello, Steeler Nation. This is G.Stryker with the SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. And today we are honored to have a special guest co-host today, Steeler alumni, starting tackle in Super Bowl 30, John Jackson. John, how are you today?
Gee, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And you have your own podcast as well. Please tell Steeler Nation what your podcast is and what it's all about.
It's called the Offline Podcast. And what it is about me talking to former players in different sports and just having a conversation. And it's been going well, and really been enjoying it.
Great. And then you said other sports. So what sports do you focus on? Is it because you think if it's called offline, I think it would be relating to your lineman position that you were and maybe be lineman focused?
Nah, I mean, it's kind of like we've talked to baseball players, basketball players, and we're just, we're opening up to all the sports. I'm an offensive lineman, so I kind of want to be all over the board.
That's perfect. And you're a lover of sports, and I'm a lover of sports. And even though I'm passionate and crazy about the Steelers, I still love my hockey. I still love my baseball, my basketball. So I do have a well-rounded appetite for sports as well. So great podcast to be a part of there, Steeler Nation. Make sure to keep an eye out for that. Also, wanted to let Steeler Nation know, please check out our sponsor here at Total Sports Enterprises. I'm going to show you a picture. Today, usually we have this going out through Twitter, which our Twitter guy handles know, which our Twitter Steeler Nation knows. But this time we're doing it through Instagram. It's an autographed Juju Smith-Schuster signed Color Rush jersey. Jump on to Total Sports Enterprises Instagram. That's at Total Sports Enterprises. And all you need to do is tag 5 friends. Make sure you're following Total Sports Enterprises. Make sure you're following SteelerNation.com and also Steeler Nation Podcast, and you are entered to win a free Juju Smith-Schuster signed jersey, and we're giving that out tomorrow. But one thing we are giving out today, Twitter, this is for you guys too, DC4LCustomTees.com. That is at DC4LCustomTees. We are giving away a free Corvette Juju dancing t-shirt today. Ask some questions. The question that we like here at the end of the show is going to get a free t-shirt on Twitterverse. So good luck to you guys there at Steeler Nation on Twitter. And we had a fortunate occurrence this past week here, John. Steelers finally figured out how to win a game again.
Yeah, they did.
And now they are the champions of the AFC North. So you watched the game, I imagine. How did you feel?
I felt pretty good. I didn't feel too good at the first half, but they came back pretty strong the second half. But they're still lacking in the running game, and they've got to get that running game back in order. They
really do. I mean, and you can see, I mean, you being an offensive lineman, you're a part of a lot of excellent rushing offenses that the Steelers had. I mean, that was our identity as the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the fans' identity. So now the running game, it seems like it's not even with running the football. It's trying to set up these short passes, which are still a ball control offense, just in a different way.
Right. And I think that gets you in trouble, G, because it's one of those things where you become one-dimensional, and the Steelers have become one-dimensional. And it's a lot easier to go with the defense and make sure that you can, concentrate on one thing. And that's what they're doing. And you look at the Cincinnati game, Cincinnati just slapped them right in the mouth and just kept slapping them.
Yeah, they did. And you're right, that's what teams want to do from a defensive standpoint, is make the other team one-dimensional. Then you can pin your ears back, you can rush the passer. I know Ben getting the ball out of his hands relatively quickly within 2.2 seconds, 2.3 seconds, I think is his average, leading the league. I know that helps with the pass rush. That helps with at least the ability to keep the clock moving if he can get it out of his hands quickly. But just these statistics, I mean, that we're looking at right now, I mean, 20 total yards on offense. I think this is only the second time in Steelers history that they've won the game rushing the ball with 20 yards or less. And the last time, oddly enough, John, I don't even know if this might be before your time now, It was also against the Colts, but they happened to be in Baltimore at the time, and it was the 1957 Colts. So that was
that's a little bit before my time.
yeah, yes, it is. I don't even think you were born by then.
No.
So, but that is the last time the Steelers have only gotten 20 yards rushing and still won a game, which is amazing. So James Conner, I mean, he still was able to put up some yardage. He ended up doing it more so in the passing game. He had 45 yards to go with his 25 yards rushing for, a balance of at least 65 yards, and still did end up with that touchdown rushing as well. But as you're seeing it, you being an offensive lineman, knowing the Pittsburgh Steelers team, is there something schematically that is the problem with the way that the Steelers are designing their plays? Is it the play of the offensive line, or does it happen to be that the way the defenses now are scheming us?
Well, I think it's just that the Steelers really haven't bought into running the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, they want that quick pass. I mean, you look at what they were doing on third down efficiency. I mean, they were 4 for 11.
Yeah.
That's for a Steeler team. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, but they've got this week is a big week for them because they got to commit to the run and get that thing fixed. And I think they can get it fixed.
Yeah. But at least in this respect, Ben did come back in the second half. He looked like he was starting to target farther down the field as opposed to more of the 8 yards and in that we were trying in the first half. Took a couple deep shots, one to Claypool, one to Juju, one to DJ, of course, as well. And then got a couple pass interference calls too, which helped them get some chunk plays and pick up some yardage. But he had 49 pass attempts, ended up with 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, and fortunately no interceptions in the first half. It looked like he could have had a couple.
Yeah. I mean, if you throw the ball almost 50 times as an offensive lineman, it's a long day.
Wow.
An offensive lineman wants to run the ball.
Yeah.
Point blank. And you start getting over that 40 threshold and close to 50, you're going to be one tired offensive lineman.
Because you're walking backwards then at the snap as opposed to walking forwards, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And you have less control of the game. You control the game by running the ball.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what they've been lacking in like these last 3 games.
Yeah. Juju still ended up with a good game. He had 9 catches for 96 yards, a touchdown, and now his 8th touchdown of the season, which is a career high for him. So kudos to him. Deontay Johnson had another good game with 8 catches and 75 yards and a touchdown. And of course, like Eric Ebron, that was an interesting pickup in the offseason as well, because it seems like the Steelers have always tried to get that one guy or that one tight end in the offseason, and it hasn't always worked out, whether it's Ramiersma or whether it's oh gosh, I forgot Green. They got Ladarius Green that tried to get in the one other year, but this time it looks like they finally found their pass catching tight end.
Yeah, and they did, but they need a blocking tight end.
They do.
They need a blocking tight end. I mean, it's always going back to the run, and if you could set that up, I mean, just like if you look at the game, they really had a hard time with play action. They couldn't do play action because they didn't run the ball.
Yeah.
And when you don't run the ball well, it's tough to do play action.
So I guess this one came down to more so turnovers than anything else, John. I mean, it seemed like the Steelers were able to get the interception and the fumble, and they were +3, I think, to fortunately not giving up a turnover, where they gave up a few of these last couple games, which tends to be the biggest difference in winning and losing, it seems like, for these football games.
Yeah, it is. But, the Steelers defense all year have been playing really good. I mean, you look at Hayward and you look at Watts. I mean, those guys are – I mean, that's defense. And then you've got a great secondary back there. So it's one of those things where you don't want to play them that long. If they can go in there and do some 3 and outs, they're more fresher, but they're a better team.
Yeah, they are. And fortunately, you were talking about the defense. I mean, the defense put together a strong approach, especially in the second half when they were letting up some plays in the first. Kind of really locked it down, only let up the field goal early in the third quarter. And from then on, they shut them out in the rest of the game. You had Watt leading the way again with 2 sacks. You have Avery Williamson actually adding a sack, and Hayward and Tuitt each with sacks, 6 total TFLs. So now that's a sack in 72 straight games, which is extending their NFL record from 3 years ago. We just talked about this. And do you happen to know who had their first sack when this started 3 years ago?
No.
It's a player that we at least know. It was actually James Harrison started it with 2 sacks, the first 2 sacks on this run. So it was
Right.
so yeah. So now we're all the way up through, and Tuitt's extending it as well as the rest of the teams. And this team now is over 50 sacks on the season. So this is the second time it's happened where a team has gone 4 seasons in a row with 50 plus sacks. The last time was in your generation against, at that time, the 85-88 New York Giants.
Wow.
And that team obviously had a great pass rush attack as well. But it's amazing that it's been that long since that streak has been able to come up. And with the way that this defense is set up, who's to say it can't happen again next year?
No, I mean, I think these guys are going to be around for a while, and hopefully they can re-sign Watt in the offseason and make sure that he's there, because he's a big part of the Steelers defense.
He really is. And plus he's just so disruptive. He's not only is he getting sacked, he forced the fumble there on the sack strip, the forced fumble there, which was a big game-changing moment in the first half, which was able to get our only score there in the first half on the short field. But those are so important. And the way he's playing too, I don't know. I mean, I'm not as objective being all into the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know you're probably more objective than I am, liking all of sports and having a broadcast career. But to me, I don't see anyone really close to what TJ Watt is doing this season. I mean, he's leading the league in tackles. He's leading the league in quarterback hits. He's leading the league in tackles for loss. And to me, I think he's the runaway choice for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know your opinion on that.
No, I think he is. I mean, you look at him week in and week out, and he appears in front of nowhere. But I mean, he's doing a really good job with the pass coverage as well, which people don't really think about him covering. I mean, he does a great job. That all facets of his game are up here when everybody else is down here. So I mean, he deserves at least to be in that talk about MVP. And let's just see what happens, in these next couple games, especially in the playoffs.
Indeed. And Coach Tomlin just said a little bit earlier in his press conference when to describe TJ Watt and what he does, he literally said TJ Watt is from another planet. This guy is just his preparation and his attention to detail and his work ethic and everything combined is just unreal. And that all combined is making him the player that he is today. So big words also from Coach Tomlin. And I take it from you. I mean, I know you played for the Steelers. Are they still the team that you really follow then here in the offseason?
Yeah. I mean, I retired as a Steeler.
Yeah.
So that's really the only team I really follow. I'll watch other games. But my heart's in Pittsburgh.
That's great. Oh, that's great. And I know you're a big guy too. So for me, it's interesting to see such a little guy on the field making big plays. And that's the 5'9" Mike Hilton, who is one of my favorite players. He's closer to my size than your size. And but just to be out there, still he got an interception, 2 passes defense, and a fumble recovery. The guy's just always around there, and he's usually the one splitting the 2 defenders on a screen to make a tackle on these wide receiver bubble screens on the outside.
Right. I mean, he's a hell of an athlete, but I think his intensity makes him 6'2". So
it really does.
It's one of those things where those are the kind of guys on defense that you want in that secondary.
Yeah.
That are not afraid to come up and make those tackles, or not afraid to get interceptions.
And even rushing the passer, he's not afraid of running between 2 guys your size. And that's just the amazing thing, and how he times his blitzes as well. He's just really a joy to watch. And I at least wanted to give some kudos as well to Avery Williamson. We picked him up, 5-6 weeks ago from the Jets, and he put together his best game of the season for both teams. 14 total tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss. These are his first 2 tackles for a loss on the season. And now he's up over 100 tackles on the season, which is great because he had to switch teams and really kind of take 2-3 games off there just to kind of learn our system. But man, is he playing at a high level now when the Steelers really needed it with all those injuries at middle linebacker?
Right. And that was a great pickup because of the injury bug that hit the Steelers. But it's one of those things where he's come in and he's really bought into the Steeler way with the system and in the locker room. It's one of those things that you hope that when you get a guy, especially late in the season, that he can step up, and he's been stepping up.
Man, and Now the Steelers defense has 65 total takeaways since 2019, which is number 1 in the NFL. And this season, they now have 11 games with multiple turnovers. So that also leads the league. So, I mean, it seems like the past 2 years, the Steelers have been starting to get more and more turnovers. Now, is this a difference in the scheme, in your opinion, or is this happen to be the Steelers drafting quicker, faster playmakers to be able to go out and get these balls?
Well, I think all the guys on defense have bought into the system, especially the defensive linemen, and with their great pass rush they put on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you feel that pressure as a quarterback, sometimes you get rid of that ball a little too soon, or you're scrambling around and you get it away a little too late.
Yeah.
So, and it makes those secondary guys' job a lot easier than just covering guys off the fly. But I think it's a combination of both the secondary and the defensive secondary working together, and you see the end result.
And now, what we like to do at this point of the podcast is we like to give game balls. Usually, we give out one on offense and one on defense. And I'll start on giving out a game ball on offense if you want to join me as well. Like for me, the game ball on offense, this past game, I think I have to give it to Diontae Johnson, just kind of setting that tone early, diving and being laid out completely on that first deep touchdown, which is something I haven't seen a Steeler receiver really do, is like leave their feet and go horizontal for a deep touchdown catch in a long time. I mean, like Mike Wallace used to do it a lot. Louis Lips used to do it a lot. But for me, that would be my player of the game on offense. Do you have a game ball to give to?
Mine would be to the defensive line.
Awesome.
The pass rush they put on.
Yes.
And the way they carried that second half. The first half was a little shaky, but I think they really firmed it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at those turnovers in the second half. I mean, that's a big change from the first half.
It really is. Injury-wise, the Steelers are looking good, though, this week. They had a couple guys sitting out the game last week, and that was Marcus Allen with the stinger in his neck, Ola Adeniyi with his shoulder, and, of course, Chris Boswell missed the game with the groin. Anthony McFarland was also held out with an illness. We're sure it's precautionary because it happened so late in the week. Wanted to make sure it's not COVID because you don't want to have anybody getting sick this time of year heading into the playoffs. And the only other person I saw banged up was Diontae Johnson. It looked like he tweaked his ankle a little bit in the game, but he was able to come back and finish. So going into this next game, it looks like relatively the Steelers are going to be looking good. They've got a chance for Matt Filer to also come back from injured reserve. They also have a chance for Robert Spillane to come back from injured reserve the way the timing works out. Now, I don't know if they will, because the Steelers now have to figure out, I guess, if they're going to be resting players, who they can rest, and what makes the most sense. And the only player that the Steelers said that they are definitely going to rest is Big Ben, and he's not playing this week. It's going to be Mason Rudolph starting. So is there any players that you would like to see get a little bit of a needed rest, or whether or not they get held out completely, but at least drop down their snap count to the point where they're going to be nice and ready going in for the playoffs?
Right. I think that's a good move with Ben. Yeah. I think you on defense, Watt and Hayward, you want to limit their snap counts, but you still want to get that intensity because late in the season, you don't want to lose that. And going into especially the playoffs, you want that extra edge that they got right now to stay with them. And those will be the only guys, and the rest of them. But I would think that they would want to get that running game in order, and that's a big thing. And I would tell them, it's like, listen, guys, look, offensive line, we're going to run the ball today. And we got a young quarterback. We got to take some pressure off him. Yeah. But we need to get some things fixed and get them fixed in a hurry and go from there.
And I think it's possible, too, with the running game there, John, because you had in the first 5 weeks of the season, I think they had 300-yard rushers with, I think Connor had 2 and Snell had 1. So they have the potential and the ability to do so. I know they've been banged up, and you've got some guys playing hurt. DeCastro came back a little bit later on because he was a little banged up earlier when the season first started. And but Kevin Dotson looks like he is a keeper. I mean, you're an offensive lineman. What do you think then personally, and how would you grade the offensive line? You can start off with Dotson, of course, but I'd just like your input in general about the offensive line and specifically the starters.
I think overall right now, pass protection, I'd give them a B plus.
Mhm.
But as far as the running game, I'd give them a D.
Yeah.
I'd give them a D. And, late in the season, in order to be a really good team, you've got to run the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to take some pressure off the quarterback, but you also got to establish that line of scrimmage and make it easier for you. I mean, it's a lot easier when you're banging on those guys and all of a sudden they start pass rushing. They tend to slow up a little bit when you keep falling on the run.
Yeah.
So it's a big difference.
And you're right, because when you establish and you own that line of scrimmage, it turns those 3rd and 1 plays into 75, 80%. You're getting those first downs. And right now, Steelers are a little bit underneath a 50% on turning those 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s into first downs.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's disconcerting to watch as a Steeler fan. I know it's got to be frustrating to you to watch as a lineman, because I'm sure you're watching things and you're like, well, why didn't you do it this way? Or you could have, hit the guy on this side or done this specifically. So what's it like to watch from a lineman perspective?
Well, that's the only thing I really watch is offensive line. I could care less about what's going on back in the secondary.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, because I know what they need to do.
Yeah.
And to me, the things that really stand out to me is, they're too high. I mean, especially on the runs. That's why they're getting pushed back.
Yeah.
Because it's always the low man wins. And you look at the Steelers. I mean, the back is getting hit a yard behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
That's
consistent.
That's not good. Yeah.
And especially they're trying to run to the outside. It seems like they called the play and they know what's going on and everybody's in the backfield. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think they can get that fixed. And it's just a matter of setting your will as far as attitude adjustment. And that's got to be this week, because Cleveland's a good team and they've got a good defense.
Yeah.
And if you don't control that run, they're going to pop you in the mouth a few times.
Yes.
So you better we always say you better buckle up and be ready, because it's going to be a dogfight this week.
And right now, I'd say that the matchup between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, there's a lot of bad blood there now. And it had been in the previous years. It seemed like the Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals kind of had the bad blood within the division with Vontaze Burfict and Pac-Man Jones. And the style of hitting, the big hitting and maybe hitting after the play or locations where they shouldn't, but seemed like they were more interested to injure at time than as opposed to playing the game. But it seems like that kind of picks up and now is starting to happen with these Cleveland matchups. I know that they have a ton of talent on defense. They've got some excellent pass rushers, got excellent youth. And we know that this is going to be a good team for years to come. So it's nice to know that we're going to have a good, it looks like a good sustained rivalry now for the foreseeable future, when we've been used to, not really seeing anything from them for the past 2 decades.
Right. And that's because they've really got the coaching staff together, but that new owner who came in, he's done a great job as far as getting the personnel in there, and the players have bought into it. And you look, I was looking at a game, I think a couple weeks ago with the Browns, and normally they would just shut it down. They were actually trying to win the game. And I was like, okay, this is not the old Cleveland Browns. I mean, these guys are hungry and they want to win. So it always takes that little momentum as far as winning. It gives you a new attitude, and they've got a new attitude. But this week, I hope they kind of lose that attitude and go from there.
Well, at least the good point. I mean, one other thing I can remember in late 80s teams, I mean, Cleveland was the powerhouse of that division. I mean, they were a great team. And aside from a late turnover there in the playoffs, they were probably going to those Super Bowls that the Denver Broncos ended up going to. But it's just been such a, as a Steeler fan, I was used to hating the Browns first. They were the closest. We played them all the time. They were always competitive. We hated them, and it didn't seem like they ever got their swagger back once they became an expansion team. And now they're, we kind of rolled with the Ravens because the Ravens kept all the personnel they kept getting better, and then obviously then started winning some Super Bowls as well. So it's nice to see some rivalry back from that line from that perspective, at least to see. So with the Steelers resting Ben Roethlisberger, ideally, and I think you made a great point in stating they should attack the run and really try to establish the run to give some pressure off of Mason Rudolph. I would also like to see Josh Dobbs hopefully be working in on a couple packages to see if they go to maybe an RPO package or something with him.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I know that's Matt Canada's forte coming in from Maryland and in the college ranks. He's used to seeing those types of aspects. And it's also, since that's also Josh's job, it seems like for the scout teams and when we're getting ready for those mobile quarterbacks and Lamar Jackson, he's the one out there running those teams to say, hey, this is what it looks like.
I mean, I think you've definitely got to sprinkle some of those in.
Yeah.
But you've got to sprinkle them in because you've got to give some other teams something to really think about. Okay, what if this guy comes in and go from there? And plus, he deserves some time. He's done a great job, like you said, on the scout team. You know what? Put him on the field and let's see what he can do. I mean, it's a futures thing.
So, and you also have some experience, pass blocking for both, pocket passers and for mobile quarterbacks. So how different is your approach when you are going to be pass blocking for a mobile quarterback?
It's a little different. A pocket quarterback, the guy can't run. That's why he's a pocket quarterback.
He's there. You know where he's going.
Yeah, you know exactly where he's going to be. A mobile quarterback, you can get away with it. I mean, I remember when Cordell was playing.
Yeah.
We were always told never to hold. And we were like, don't hold. Yeah. Cordell, get away from him. So we don't want to take the holding call. Yeah. So just let him run. And they want him to run. But with a pocket quarterback, you've got to hold because he can't run. That's a big difference.
And that's interesting. You mentioned Cordell Stewart. Obviously, he was an incredibly athletic quarterback and one of these, which it seems like nowadays with these athletic quarterbacks, they're setting up the offense to really cater to their skills. When it seemed like at the time when Cordell was quarterback, his first year starting, they kind of let him do that. But the second year, it seemed like they tried to put him more into a pocket passer perspective, trying to get back, go through his reads and throw the football. How difficult is that for a mobile quarterback to kind of, have to become something they're not? And is it just a better approach to kind of change the offense to fit the abilities of your quarterback?
Well, I think it's really tough from a perspective that you're an athlete more so than a quarterback. And about Cordell, I know it was a lot tougher because those reads had to be really quick.
Yeah.
And when you're a mobile quarterback and you're on the run, you can see the field gets a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And as a pocket quarterback, it's like tunnel vision. It's like, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here.
Yeah.
And it's a little different. But I think he did a great job for what they asked him to do. And that's what you have to do as a professional. Whatever they ask you to do, that's what you do.
Yeah, and he put together some great seasons, some great Pro Bowl years as well, and got some great chances as well with those teams. And, it was for me, and I wanted to ask you this personally, like I was a Steeler fan, I was born in the 70s, but I really didn't get to enjoy the 70s teams winning Super Bowls because I was so young. I really didn't get into football until, Refrigerator Perry was out there playing with the 84 Bears or 85 Bears when they won it. And that became kind of my window. Like I watched Joe Montana in 84 year before because he beat the Steelers the Steelers lost to Miami, in the AFC Championship game that year. So that kind of like was my gateway, but seeing you getting into going and play Super Bowl 30 was just a dream for a Steeler fan because it had been so long since we'd been to a Super Bowl. That was our first Super Bowl. So what was it like for that whole experience? Where was that Super Bowl played? How did that, that media week work out for you? And just what was it like from your perspective?
We played it in Arizona. It was amazing. All the different people that would come out of the woodwork as far as press. Met a lot of different press people and doing a lot of interviews and just they wanted to get to know the guys. And it was about, they really hadn't seen these guys or us, I would say. I mean, Dallas had been in the Super Bowl previous.
Yes.
It was one of those things where they really got to know who the Pittsburgh Steelers were doing that week. I mean, it was a 2-week layoff, and to me, it was a long week. I mean, we practice instead of just, let's go get this game on. Let's go get this game on. It probably was the longest 2 weeks I've ever had to get ready for one game.
Oh, wow.
But it was a great experience. I mean, great experience. I mean, that was my 8th year in the league.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I tell people I was fortunate enough to go, but I know a lot of people who played for 13, 14 years and have never experienced that. And that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. And one of the stories from that season, which I just thought was, it's something that's never happened since. And that was when, Rod Woodson went down with the ACL injury in week 1, trying to tackle Barry Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
But he was able to come back, and it wasn't put on IR, because back then when you're on IR, you were done. You were done for the season. And Coach Cowher said, we're going to leave a spot for him here. And he was able to come back, and he was able not only to play in the Super Bowl, but to make a play in the Super Bowl. And what was it like then? Just what was it like for the team reaction, I would say, for him to be able to get back for the Super Bowl to play and make a play then in the Super Bowl?
Well, we knew that Woodson had a great spirit. He loved to compete, tremendous athlete, but he was pretty much the heart of the secondary.
Yeah.
So you had to keep him, with the team and make sure you didn't lose that momentum, because if you look back the previous year, we were pretty good the previous year.
Yes.
And
really,
it was one of those things where you wanted to keep everybody intact.
Yeah.
And you knew that they could do the surgery early. And him being a sprinter, he knew his body, and he knew if he could come back or not. And that was the biggest thing.
But he came back. It's insane. He came back in 4 months. This is usually a 9-month injury for most people. So that was just absolutely incredible at the time to see something. I guess technically 5, because he had the extra month for the playoffs too. But it was just, it's something that I don't think would ever occur again. I mean, if somebody got an ACL injury, got surgery, they'd be done for the year. And to me, it was just, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe watching that and having that transpose. And also, switching Lake, who happened to be a strong safety at the time. And then the Steelers were losing a few games, and then end up sliding Lake to that cornerback position where Rod used to play. And then all of a sudden it clicked, and it didn't seem like you guys lost a game for the rest of the year. So it was a really nice change. And I guess that really helped out the defense with that change.
Mm-hmm. I mean, both of those guys back there were pretty smart guys, and they were interchangeable. So you could use them in different positions and different facets of the defense. I mean, you remember Cornell, he used to blitz a lot, which people, I tell people, when you see him, he's up there for a reason. He's not up there to take tickets and say hello. He wants to be the quarterback.
Oh, that is,
you better block him.
And talking about blitzing the quarterback, I mean, you had those outside linebackers and Lloyd and Kevin Green too. And we were really sorry and surprised and shocked to hear the passing of Kevin Green this past week as well. But there was so for Kevin Green and Greg Lloyd, do you have any stories that really kind of encapsulate what they were as football players?
Well, I think they were real competitors. And I think they, when I was there watching them, they fed off each other.
Yeah.
And it was no animosity. It's like, okay, you're getting all the limelight. So if I want the limelight, I just got to go get a sack or make a big play. And if I do that, I'm in the limelight. But, they would always talk to us, and they were like, we're just going to let our play speak for ourselves. And, it's a tragic story that Kevin passed away. And I actually have on my podcast.
You had, how long ago?
About a month ago.
Really?
Yeah. And he was in great spirits and great shape.
Yeah.
And I definitely asked everybody to check it out, but it was a great interview. I had a great time with him. I mean, he was Kevin.
Yeah.
And we told some stories, and one of the stories I told was he was a Jeopardy fan. He loved Jeopardy. And I would tell people that, and they'd look at me like, let me get this straight. Kevin Green, who beats the crap out of you, loves Jeopardy. I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, the guy loves Jeopardy. I'd walk by his room,
Yeah.
and I go, "Okay, what's up? You ready?" He's like, "No, let's come on in." And I'm like, "Watching Jeopardy." Okay. So I would always go by, and we'd sit there watching Jeopardy. And it was like, and we're thinking, man, we should have took school a little more serious because we have no clue what those answer those questions are.
And was he good at answering the questions in Jeopardy? Was he a trivia head?
Yeah, he was good. He was
that's
good.
something else.
And he just enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
And things like that. And we reflected on that. And we just had a really good time about who he was as a person and what he enjoyed about the Steelers.
Awesome.
Great. I had a great time with the interview, but it was more like reminiscing.
Yeah.
And
hanging out with an old friend.
Yeah. And we did one thing. I had one bone to pick with him, and it was about he had won the sack. He was a sack leader 1 year. Actually, he was a sack leader. We're going to the playoffs, and we played San Diego.
Yeah.
So he came up to me before the game, and he goes, "John, I need a big favor." And I was like, I'm thinking, it's before the game. I'm like, what can I do? And he goes, "Well, I need you to shut Leslie O'Neal down today." And I'm looking at him like, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, I need it. I need it. I said, "I got you." And so I had to change my mindset.
Yeah.
So I go out there and I'm playing like it's a playoff game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I want to make sure that Kevin Green wins a sack, wins a sack title.
Yeah.
So me and Leslie O'Neal, we're going through it, and he's like, "Why are you playing so hard? You guys are already in the playoffs." I said, "I got to shut you down today because Kevin wants to win the sack title."
That is great.
And you should have seen his face. His face is like, and he's like, "What is he giving you?" I said, "I don't know. He just asked me for a favor."
Oh, that is a great story. Awesome.
So I shut him down.
Yeah.
And then Kevin goes, like the next week, Kevin brings in a bottle of Dom Perignon.
Yeah.
And he brings a case. And I'm thinking, man, I'm going to get a case of Dom Perignon. So Kevin proceeds to give every offensive lineman who played in that game a bottle of Dom P.
Nice.
I was the last person to get the bottle. And I looked at Kevin, I go, "Kevin, what's up with giving everybody else?" I said, "Nobody else blocked him except me." And he goes, "Aren't you a team player?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a team player." And I told him, I said, "Kevin, I was hurt that, I didn't get the first bottle. I got the last bottle." And he goes, "Well, I'm sorry that your painters are in a bunch." And he goes, "Next time I'll come to you first. I'll come to you first." He says, "I'm sorry." So
see, he should have just played it on the fly and say, "I was saving the best for last."
He should have, but I was kind of hurt. I was taken back. I was like, "Wait a minute! If I'm the only guy blocking this guy, and I'm pretty sure you had some incentives in there."
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
So
track wise,
it was all good. It was all good. I mean, he asked me for a favor, and I was like, I had to step my game up, and I'll never forget that because every time I see Leslie O'Neal, he's like, "John, really?"
That's great.
I'm like, "Dude, Kevin asked me for a favor, so I had to take care of my teammate, and I did."
Well, I still hope you enjoyed that bottle of Dom. That's still a nice thing to
You know what? I don't drink champagne. I didn't drink. Wow. I didn't drink. I gave it away.
Okay. Even better. So now we're at the point of the podcast where we take questions from Steeler Nation, and most of the questions come from the Steeler Nation forum. I'm going to be pulling a couple here off of Twitter, pulling a couple here off of Facebook as well as we're going live. And the first one, /Steel from over there at SteelerNation.com asks, first, I think you were underrated as a Steeler. Thank you for your time in Pittsburgh. How was it like blocking for Barry Foster? And are there any noteworthy stories to tell about Barry or the running game in general?
Yeah. First of all, I don't think I was underrated because as a player, I got more confirmation from other players.
Yes.
And to me, that's what we play the game for, believe it or not. I mean, yeah, we play it for the fans, but when a a defensive guy acknowledges you,
Yeah.
It makes the world a difference. And that was my like justification that, you know what, you're good enough. You're good enough. But Barry Foster, we enjoyed blocking for Barry because when Barry came in, that was when we first established that we were a running team.
Yeah.
And we had, like I said, if you're an offensive lineman, if you've got choices between running the ball and passing the ball, you're going to pick running the ball because it's a lot easier. Yeah. And, you know, as far as mistakes, I mean, you make one mistake and the guy's by you. You make one mistake in the running, you just lay on top of it. Yeah. So it's a difference. Yeah, it's a big difference.
And I remember one of the seasons, Barry Foster was up there for the rushing title. And I think lost out to Emmitt Smith by like a yard or 2 yards.
In the last game.
In the last game. And I think it was that was also at the point where Dallas had made the playoffs. They really didn't have anything to play for, but they threw Barry in to try to get his yardage. Because I think that game occurred after Barry Foster's game. So what did it feel like, at least to be able to be part of that, chasing that rushing title? Because you got to take a lot of pride as being that offensive line, chasing a rushing title for your running back.
No, we took a lot of pride in it because it was one of those things where we were not going to be acknowledged for it, but we knew down deep in our heart that, you know, we did a pretty good job. You know, when a guy wins the rushing title, it's a big thing. I mean, with Barry, we came a little short, but that was not on our fault. That was just because if you played those two games at the same time instead of the game later, I think Barry wins the rushing title.
Yeah.
I mean, he run. I blocked for a good offense. I was on a good offensive line with Jerome Bettis, who won that rushing title, and that meant a lot. He won it a couple times when he was in Pittsburgh.
That's great. Oh, that is great. And so was there any difference then between blocking for somebody like Barry Foster as opposed to blocking for Bettis?
Not really. You just wanted to make sure that you had the hole open because you know they were going to come through, and you didn't want to stick anything out there because they were just going to run it over.
So they were hitting that hole hard, is what you're saying?
They were hitting that hole hard. Like an offensive lineman, we know where the holes are.
Yeah.
And our job is to make the hole and to get out of the hole, which you see some guys, they kind of get a little lackadaisical as far as being in that hole.
Yeah.
But that's where that running back's going. And you better get out of that hole. And I had, on the podcast, I had Jerome Bettis, and I thanked him for not running up my butt. So, and he was like, yeah, you knew how to get out of the way. Yeah, I knew how to get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's just as important. See, that's not something you hear from an offensive lineman because your job is to be in the way for the most part, but then you got to learn how to get out of the way. So that's a really, really interesting point. I love that. Absolutely love that. We got another question here from Hoot, and he asks, what was the transition from Chuck Noll to Coach Cowher like?
I'll give you a great example. Old school versus new school. Chuck was hard-nosed, and we couldn't wait for the game because practice was so hard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when Cowher came, he kind of instilled it. It's like, you know what, guys, we're not playing the Steelers this week. We're playing another team. So let's be a little more conscious of what we're doing, but don't leave it all on the practice field and you got nothing. And it was one of those things where we had to get used to practicing at a certain tempo. And I think it saved us, especially when you get banged up. It's one of those things where it makes you more ready for the game. I mean, it was hard when I was with Chuck Noll. If you got dinged up in practice, you were pretty much dinged up for the week. So it's tough.
And that's also, I mean, it seems like now if anybody gets dinged up, you're done practicing until you get to the game, the way that the approach is now. But so you're saying that Chuck Noll would say, if you're dinged up, you still got to keep practicing, work through it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was no, I mean, I always tell people, I saw more guys get hurt on Fridays practicing than the game.
Wow. That is, and that's different too, because I know when Chuck started off, he was, coaching in 14-game seasons. So that's a big difference than when you extend the league by 2 extra weeks, and you're playing 16 game seasons, and
Mhm.
the buys are all over the place back when you guys were playing. Sometimes they're week 4, sometimes they're week 12. It's there's never any kind of like really a semblance of when these buys were going to show up.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, a couple seasons we had a 2 week. We had 2 week buys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Which was insane.
Yeah.
We figured the season was long enough.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we got that with Chuck Noll.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, he's going to kill us.
So did you practice that week you had off?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was just come in every day and we were banging. We were like, oh, this is crazy. We don't play anybody this week.
Yeah.
Don't play anybody this week. But that was the mentality. And that's how we got good.
Yeah.
Practice gets the defense and practice gets the offense. That's how you get better, by practice. And he was a firm believer in that. And it carried on. I mean, because Cowher had the core group was really Chuck Noll's guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Starting off.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get your perspective on this. This is just a question from me. I know that the league is now going to extend to 17 games next year. So how much did you ever? I don't think you played during the 14 game stints. I think that was still in the 70s, and they switched over in the 80s to the 16 games. So what would you feel if you were a player used to playing 16 games and then you're switching and playing 17? Is that a lot tougher to have to deal with that extra week as a player?
Yeah, it is, because think about this. Now you've got an 18-week season with that bye week.
Yeah.
Plus you got the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where, okay, 16 games were not enough. And, if you want the playoffs to be better, you know what? Add another team like they did this year. They added another team.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where if you're used to playing in the playoffs, then you're used to a longer season.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then it gets a little harder, especially at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And with Pittsburgh, I played in 13 playoff games. So I was used to playing a longer season.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference, because it's a total mindset. You've got to get your mind ready for a longer season. And especially, we always told each other, in December, we got to be on point.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no messing around. Let's just get done what we need to get done and win some games.
And that's kind of different. The way that's happened this year was the first Steelers losses of the year were in December, and it seemed like they started kind of regressing and taken back in December, and not still, like you said, still trying to work out that running game. So it's going to be, you're saying it's probably going to be some tough sledding hitting the playoffs for them if they're trying to make a long run. And
it is, if they don't get that running game established, because you go into these games and you need to take some time off the clock. Well, you can't keep throwing the ball, because throwing the ball, you're not going to take enough time off the clock.
Yeah, incompletion stop.
Plus, you as an offensive lineman, you feel better, especially when you can dominate a guy in the run.
Yeah.
And it gives you just that much for the next game. And that's something that they've got to do. And I hope they can get it done.
Yeah. And then for you, Blitz also asks us, what were the difference in playing for the Steelers and then playing for the Chargers and Bengals?
Almost night and day.
Really?
Yeah. When I first came in the league in '88, playing for Coach Noll and playing for Bill Cowher, I was there 10 years. And
now was that 88 year? Was that the year that you lost the first 2 games without scoring a point? You're outscored like is that the 2 blowout ones, and then you came back through in the playoffs, and then
no, that was '89.
That was '89. Okay, great. Yeah.
That was actually my first year as a full starter.
Yes.
So it was crazy. I mean, we couldn't score, but the defense scored for us, though. So you got to give props to the defense.
Yeah, it was a great defense.
But the whole thing, G, it's about culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was used to a culture where everybody knew how to come together as a team.
Yeah.
And do what they needed to do to win.
Mm-hmm.
I go to San Diego, and that culture's not there. I go to Cincinnati, definitely the culture's not there. I remember we won a game in Cincinnati, and a guy looked at me and he goes, "This is like winning the Super Bowl." I go, no, it's not. I said, you have no clue what the Super Bowl is. And he looked at me and goes, well, how do you know? I said, because I played in the Super Bowl. I know. This is not it. This is not it. So it's just a culture thing. And you've got players who understand how to play the game.
Yeah.
And when to take it up that next level. I mean, because you're going to see the Steelers hopefully take this thing to another level because they have to.
Yeah.
If you want to win a championship, you've got to take it to another level. And hopefully they can do that.
So you're saying in San Diego, I know San Diego has beautiful weather. They've got, beautiful women. It's a nice town.
I'll put it to you like this. If your team's losing in San Diego and you got a choice between watch a bunch of guys lose or go to the beach, where you going, G?
Going to the beach.
There you
go. So it was more like the mindset over there kind of because of the weather was so nice that they treat it more like a job and it was something you had to do and then you can go out and do other things after you played football? Or was it just that the team camaraderie and the focus of the team just was different in San Diego than
well,
in Pittsburgh?
I think kind of two things. Being in San Diego is a distraction, but I think the core guys they had there just were not on the same page. We in Pittsburgh, what a lot of people don't know is we used to have team meetings like after today's practice where we sat and we did some fellowshipping. And if anybody had a problem with anybody, that's where you got it off your chest. It's like, hey, you know what? You're not playing hard enough. And why are you not playing hard enough? What's going on?
Wow.
What do I need to help you with to get you where we need to go?
Yeah.
And those are the things that, to me, separate good teams from bad teams. And you need those.
And now I'm just bringing up the last questions from the SteelerNation Facebook page here. So to find our last comments here, and give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, we have Joseph Jester came up with a question for us, and he says, how can an offense with so many weapons week in and week out look like they have no idea where the red zone is? What does Randy Fichtner have to do differently to get these guys, ready to play?
It goes back to that simple thing. It's a mindset.
Yep.
And their mindset has to be, they need to run the ball. Yeah, they're going to pass the ball. Let's be honest. If you don't pass the ball, then you get in bigger trouble.
Yeah.
But if you do both things, then the game becomes a little more better each time. You can do one or the other. And that's what they got to do. They've just got to run the ball. And it's a mindset. And hopefully they can get that thing together this week.
We have a question here from Robert Joseph, and I think he's basically trying to ask, do you think Big Ben would be able to come back and play another full season next year?
I think if he wants to and he's healthy enough, I mean, Ben's a good athlete, but Ben takes care of his body. Not like in his younger days when he was riding motorcycles, but he takes care of his body, and he understands that when the older you get, there's different things you have to do to make sure your body's ready for a season. And I think he'll do it if he wants to come back.
Nice. And I got a question here from Ryan Stansberry. He wants to know, was Lynn Swann a good teammate? And what was he like as a teammate?
We got the wrong air.
That's right. That's wrong one, Ryan. Yeah, because I think that's right. You were probably playing. Was Stallworth? No, Stallworth was even gone. Lips was probably there when you first started, though, right?
Lips was there. Yeah. The only person that from that Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl, was Dwayne Woodruff.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And the defense on the secondary side.
Right.
Nice. So looks like the last question that we have, I just saw it here and now it just left me. Oh, because it came. That's right. They asked, where is your podcast? What's the name of the podcast? How can we find this offline podcast?
You can find the offline podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, and the video is on YouTube.
Nice.
So just go to offline podcast.
Nice. Do you also have the offlinepodcast.com?
Yes.
Great. So Steeler fans, go to the offlinepodcast.com. Check out all of the ways to find it. John, obviously you're so fun to listen to and talk with, and you've got some great podcasts, I'm sure, for Steeler fans to go back and listen to. Have John interviewing the bus, have John interviewing Kevin Green, and just enjoy your time listening to his podcasts. Because you've been an absolute pleasure, and we really appreciate you being on today with us. And thank you for being our short notice co-host, since Hunter unfortunately couldn't make it today.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me, G. I appreciate it.
Oh, very much so. And Steeler Nation, make sure to follow them also on Twitter at @off_line pod. That is OFF_LINEPOD, or on Instagram at off.linepod. That's OFF.LINEPOD. And much pleasure to you, John. Thank you again. Hopefully we'll see you soon, and hopefully the Steelers can figure out how to run the football now.
They will. Thanks for having me, G. Have a great holiday.
You. Yep. See ya.
Okay.
In Steeler Nation, visit our title sponsor, Total Sports Enterprises, on Twitter to be part of their signed merch giveaways done every week at Total Sports ENT. And make sure to go to their Instagram for that free signed Juju Smith-Schuster jersey, the Color Rush jersey, at Total Sports Enterprises on Instagram. If you have any Christmas money burning a hole in your pocket, check out SteelerNation.com gear page and get geared up for your virtual tailgates, like this awesome Champions t-shirt I am wearing right now. Go on over the gear page, the apparel page at SteelerNation.com, and get yourself a nice gift here for the end of the year so we can root for the playoffs appropriately. SteelerNation.com is the best site for fast, unique Steeler content on the internet. Click the podcast button to listen to one of our many interviews, or the forum button for the best football discussion on the web. Subscribe to SteelerNation.com YouTube channel to be the first on these vidcasts and video uploads at www.youtube.com/C/SteelerNation. Tweet us at SteelerNation, Instagram us at SteelerNation.com, follow the podcast on Twitter at _SN Podcast, and Instagram at SteelerNation Podcast, and follow me, Stryker, on Instagram and Twitter at SN_Stryker, spelled with a Y. Thanks for joining us for the SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I am your host, G.Stryker, with John Jackson, rooting along with you as always. Go Steelers!